I hope I'll deserve that applause at the end of my brief and very humble words I have to share with you. But at the very beginning, please allow me to express my gratitude to the organizers of this, for my nation, or rather the nations of my country, extremely important idea of dialogue, especially dialogue between churches. As you know, the Republic of Macedonia is one of the former Yugoslav states that appeared on the public and political scene after the dismemberment, rather violent in some cases, of Yugoslavia. We managed to avoid the wars that the other states that came out of Yugoslavia were having or had or probably still suffering the consequences of those violent conflicts. Why, one would ask? Well, first of all, because ever since the foundation of the Republic of Macedonia in Yugoslavia, in the basis of our country, we had recognition and respect as values in our constitution. We recognize the fact that we have several religions, to name the principal ones, three with all their ramifications. Christianity, both Orthodox and Catholic and Protestant, we have 9 Protestant temples and churches. Islam, which is shared by around 30% of our population, and Judaism, since our cities in the medieval era were founded by the Sephardi Jews that came from Spain. So in my country, you'll find a priest, an imam, a rabbi, and our former president, who tragically lost his life in an air accident, was the president of the Methodist Church in our country. So things like that do happen in Macedonia. And maybe this was the main reason why we avoided the extreme hatred and violence that succumbed the people of Bosnia, some of them separated only by religion and nothing else. In my country, we have 2 large communities: the Macedonian nation, the bearer of sovereignty, shared with the largest community, which is the Albanian community, that belongs to a completely different group of people, that has a completely different language, and that is predominantly Muslim, and yet a part of those citizens of Macedonia are also Catholic. We have a Catholic bishop, archbishop, we have a Orthodox archbishop, we have a Reisul Ulema, and we have our rabbis. And all of that was the buffer that prevented us from getting involved in the tragedy of Yugoslavia. And yet, years after, political misunderstandings between our 2 largest communities, the Macedonian and the Albanian, brought us to a brink of conflict, mainly because of not truly and to the possible limit understood and implemented rights. And therefore, this brief conflict, which was not even comparable to what happened in Bosnia, Croatia, or Kosovo, which had about 150, and every casualty is a tragic one, casualties among fighters and police, ended with an understanding that we have to broaden that base, or as I said, that buffer that prevented the wars of Yugoslavia spilling over in Macedonia, and we did. We did. I had the historic opportunity, and I'm proud of it, to participate in the negotiation of the Ohrid Framework Agreement while it was held among the parliamentarian parties, or the parties represented in our parliament. Believe me, it was a very difficult task to try to build confidence while we had people in the mountains shooting at each other. It was extremely difficult to try to codify certain rights that are inherent and that are existing in our Constitution ever since we liberated ourselves from the fascist occupation in 1944, and yet have this feeling that on the table of negotiations we have one part missing: the people in arms. And yet, our society managed in the second round, which was limited to the four principal parties representing the two communities, to say so, in conflict, reached an agreement that the country should be bilingual in all the regions where the other language, the Albanian language, is spoken by a majority larger than 25%, or in a significant number, to be the second language. Then we recognized this right to the other communities, and we established a society that I don't believe any other European country has, a society and a state of communities. So we have the Macedonian, the Albanian, the Serb, the Roma, the Bosniak, and the Vlach communities, which are equal in everything, and yet whichever of them reaches the 25% threshold of population will achieve additional rights. But as I said, we as humans, and it seems that we, the people of the Balkans, were in the front line, tend to forget that peace with a capital P is for the people and not for politicians. So whatever treaty we reach, we have to understand that it has to be accepted by all. If not, it doesn't work. And take Bosnia, for instance, 60 years after a terrific or horrific Second World War, it fell into another one. We did not in Macedonia want to repeat that. So we believe firmly, and we had recent examples that I will mention later as proof that we have understood the lesson, that in order for peace to be durable, it must come from the people. It must be done for the people, but most important of all, by the people. There are no representatives, political or otherwise religious, capable of representing all and each member of a society. So therefore, the solution, this peace, has to be all-inclusive. If not, believe me, it will not work, and we have the experience to prove it. But what happens is, and this is part of the dialogue we're trying to have today, is that in many cases peace has been violated by those that pretend to be the exclusive teachers of the way of our one and only God. They thrive on our permissiveness because we tend to forget that peace, we are the owners of peace, and we are the children of God. And until we reach the point where we must understand that we are trying to teach our new generations, is that peace has always been at hand, provided that we understand ourselves and we penetrate in the knowledge of who we are. Since I firmly believe in this, allow me to give you an example from real life so that whatever I say is believable. An example of the ways of doing things that is much stronger than any tractate or any treaties made by any one of us. And this is a true story, and we live it every year, several times. On the route of the antique Via Ignatia, where since time East and West exchanged values. Asia, the Eastern Roman Empire, and Rome and Europe, the Western Roman Empire, they were united by this Via Egnatia, which passes through my country, and in one of its intersections is the city of Debar, or Dibra in Albania. It was visited by St. Paul in his time, and it's written down in the Bible. This place, as it was then, is still now a meeting place of people, a place of religious reunion where Islam, Debar is predominantly Muslim, Christianity and Judaism meet and share their ecumenical values, mainly the teachings to love thy neighbor, to respect his beliefs, to consider him as what we all are, children of God, his temple. So therefore, this intersection, this meeting place of different ways to venerate the same idea of the Almighty must not be forgotten, and it has to be taken always as an example. The priests, and they don't distinguish among themselves, teach their flocks to venerate his love. Come Bayram after Ramadan, when it will, and it does, every year. Come Easter or Pascha, the people of Debar celebrate together. The imam, the rabbi, and the priest often use the same temple as an example that they, as religious leaders, believe in understanding and believe in the almighty idea that we should love our neighbors. When my country was at conflict among its two largest communities, the Macedonian people and the Albanian community, Debar was at peace. Not a shot fired. When time for peace came, it served as an example that life together in harmony is possible. And nearby Ohrid, the holy city of the Balkanic Peninsula and all the Slavic nations, the representatives, as I said, of our largest communities, managed an accord based on these principal values we are trying to understand and teach: mutual recognition, respect, and confidence. It seems that whenever the state of Macedonia is faced with peril, we find each other together. In many cases, neighboring countries, and in this case I'll use an example of neighboring Albania, when, as Yugoslavia and Macedonia had problems with Bulgaria and the Eastern Front, our Albanian neighbors, with whom we at the time had deep ideological differences and sometimes deeper misunderstandings, sent a message that they will be on our side whenever needed, mentioning that the fire in your neighbor's backyard is the fire in your own home. So therefore, it is something that after our misunderstanding for more rights, we took as basis of our agreement. And now, coming to the recent days, as much as many doubted the Ohrid Framework Agreement, most of all its durability, mainly because of the cultural, linguistic, and ultimately ecclesiastical differences between the communities, when we were faced with imported extremism, the two major churches, the Islamic community of Macedonia, which unites all the Muslim temples in the country, and the Christian Orthodox Church of Macedonia, followed by all the others, stood up in defense of our common values. Both leaders of the churches gave strong speeches accusing that this extremism that has come to our home is not ours, we don't want it, and it should be ousted and separated, managed to separate, which sometimes is extremely difficult when you deal with people that have misunderstood things, separated the right to protest from the right, from the non-right, from the usage of violence. So the second demonstrations, which were a protest against a decision by a court, were peaceful. Nothing happened. But there were no more Islamic extremist flags, there was no more Wahhabi teachers, there was no more Takfirists, there were no more Salafists asking for attack on not only the state, but on the Albanian representatives and on the Islamic religious community. This probably is the first time that such a thing has happened, and the international community, which always watches over us because they believe that we must be the successful experiment, was astonished to the point that they came in flocks to see in situ whether it was true. The latest one was U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Nuland. Before that, a delegation of the Assembly of the Council of Europe, which is the major authority that oversees human rights. And they left with a conviction that as much as our society manages to create problems, as it does, like any other, ours even more because it is a very complex one, as I said, it finds always better solutions, solutions that some of our neighbors are trying at this moment to implement. But you must understand the Balkanic Peninsula per se is a complicated place. It has not known peace for a very long time, and it will probably need more time to achieve it, but it will. It will, because there are non-governmental organizations. There is a very strong civil society that is advocating reconciliation, that is advocating the usage of the same principles that served our society for bringing together a peace agreement. We have not solved everything, and it will take more than my generation to do so, but the conviction that we should do is there, and it will stay. So, no matter how many languages we speak, no matter how many churches we go, no matter what name we give to the Almighty, we finally understood, after seeing how high the price is if you don't understand this, that we are children of God. The only thing and the only message we try to send to our neighbors in the Balkanic Peninsula is a question. Must violence and extremism remind us that all of us are children of the Almighty with all His names, and as such, the only bearers of peace and responsible for its maintenance. Thank you once again for listening to what I have to say.